Hey guys, welcome back to Under the Influence. I'm Riley and I am here with Nat Wojtanowski. She is an influencer TikToker based in New York City, and she actually recently shared her experience on TikTok about why she chose to leave influencing. So we're gonna dig deep, but can you give us a little bit of background about yourself and how you got into influencing and up until now?
Of course. So, about myself, I grew up in Scottsdale, Arizona, and then I moved to Columbus, Ohio when I was in high school. So I kind of like have been all over the place, went to school in North Carolina, and then ended up here. And I feel like many others, COVID was kind of the sweet spot for getting into TikTok. And I actually went home for the winter in like 2019, and I used to work at Free People at the mall, like at home. Okay. And I loved it, and I was home for a couple months, and I was like, why not just go help out like during holiday if they need extra hands? So I was doing that every day, and I was like getting ready and getting really cute. Like when you're working in retail, I feel like you want to really like put your outfit together. So, and usually I'm like in sweatpants all day. So
right.
I decided to just like roll with it, and I was getting ready every day, so I started taking outfit videos, like zoom-ins of me pulling on my pants and like a shirt and then revealing the whole outfit at the end, and that was kind of like the bread and butter of what got me started in TikTok. I mean, during COVID, I was doing like the dance trends and whatever to like.
I feel like everyone did that in the beginning before they realized like that wasn't what you had to do on TikTok.
Yeah.
Like once people realized that dancing wasn't all TikTok is, it changed the game.
Literally, I like am so awkward, and I swear my spine is fused together. Like I just cannot break it down like some of these girls on TikTok.
Yeah.
So I'd be like, like wiggling noodle, and it just did not work out for me. So anyway, I got into outfits, and I remember like opening the store and looking down on my phone and seeing that like my video had 500,000 views like in an hour and a half period. And I ran to the back to tell my manager. I didn't know what to do with myself. Like that was so exciting, and I don't know. So I kind of just rolled with that excitement, and I was like, oh, I want to feel that way again. I want to do it again. So I kept doing that same kind of, not procedure, but like strategy.
It was a formula.
Yeah, a formula. Yeah. And I had that video that I was really excited about hit 1 million in that day, and I was over the moon. And then my next one, it was when those like what my 13-year-old self would say about my outfits was like a thing, and I used those two audios, and they got me like 1.5, and then a video hit like 4.5 million views, and I literally was like, oh my god, this is just what I'm gonna stick with. So that's pretty much kind of like how I got rolling with it.
And so then those followers kind of followed you, a lot of them, to Instagram.
Yes.
And I feel like you also leaned into Instagram.
Yeah, so I had a video on Instagram. It was Reels that really kind of, I hate to say it because I hate that Instagram is like trying to become
It's
TikTok
trying to be
now.
TikTok, and the algorithm is like, you don't see any of your friends anymore. It's
literally
so frustrating.
It's incredibly frustrating. But at the time when Reels had just started happening, I was out just doing like a content day back when those, I mean, they're probably still a thing, but I'm partially retired. So
when you were still doing them.
When I was still doing it. And Lauren Wolf, who's like big Amazon TikToker, whatnot, I asked her to take a video of me just like walking by the subway. And I didn't end up using the video of me walking. It was like this 3-second clip beforehand of me noticing that people were watching me and like waving to them. And that's all it was. And the caption was like, when you catch people watching you taking content, you just like smile and wave, basically.
Right.
And literally that popped off. It got 2.2 million hits, and then I got like 8,000 new Instagram followers overnight. So I feel like, I don't know, in a way I kind of like grew my following in different, like totally different aspects. Like I didn't feel like a lot of people were kind of following me from TikTok to Instagram for whatever reason. It was more of like, I got lucky with a couple reels, and that's what brought my Instagram following.
And the interesting thing is, and correct me if I'm wrong, they probably were different videos than what was hitting on TikTok, right?
Yeah, definitely. It was more like, after that video worked out, I kind of was just taking like little funny snippets of other videos and sharing those, kind of like just shorter, quick things that people can watch over and over again quickly. I was like trying to hack the system that way. So yeah, it was just, I don't know, it kind of organically grew on both separately, which sucked. Like
it's true.
When I was like aspiring really hard to grow, like not having either of them filter into the other, I was like, what are you guys doing?
Well, it's like true that building a community is more valuable a lot of the time than followers. So it's hard when those aren't, fluidly linking together.
Yeah.
So at what point, when did you move to New York?
I moved to New York in February of 2019.
So you had started growing on social media at that time already?
I was fairly new to it at the time. It was like winter of 2019 that I kind of started rolling for real. But I had mentioned I worked at Free People when I was in Columbus, so I actually transferred to a store here.
Okay.
And I had like 3 weeks before I started work, and as soon as I got to New York, I was like, can I cuss on this? Am I allowed to say?
Yeah, oh please.
I was gonna say, like, fuck it, like, let's just go for it.
Yeah.
Like, I grabbed my roommate who also had time off work, and I just asked her to just shoot outfits after outfits. It would be 9-hour content days of us just going everywhere and anywhere that we thought was cool, going to sit outside of Cha-Cha Matcha, like, when that was cool. And I remember, like, everyone just DMing my roommate and me saying, did Natalie move to New York to become an influencer? Like, it was so frowned upon at the time, and it just seemed very, I don't know. So then I kind of wanted to prove everyone wrong and be like, maybe I did, and maybe I'm gonna do it. So that kind of gave me fuel for the fire, and it was really just that winter that kind of changed things and like made it feel real finally.
And then you went on to work at Free People, but then you did end up doing influencing full time.
Yeah, so after Free People, I left to start freelancing. I went to basically a packaging design company as their PR and social media coordinator, and it was a 3-month trial kind of contract, and it wasn't exactly like what I had expected or what they expected, so we respectfully parted ways. And that was like November of 2019, so I figured why not just go home for Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year, and then whatever. So that's when I was working at Free People and started really grinding out the content.
Okay.
And I was supposed to come back in January, and I got jury duty, and I got selected and had to stay.
Was it a murder trial?
No, there were 2 trials that week. One was a murder trial, and one was like a hit and run essentially. But it was still
not
really
a hit and run.
I know. I made the best of it. I honestly had the best time. And I was like excited to go every day. But anyway, I got stuck at home for a while, so and then I was making TikToks of my jury duty outfit.
right.
So
jury duty, but make it chic.
Yeah, exactly. I was the youngest one there, and so I was like, let's give them a little pizzazz.
Right. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so that's when it really started growing, and then once I noticed that it was, I just kept with it and tried to stay as consistent as I could. And then once COVID started to kind of be more over, not saying it's totally over, but when the city opened back up more and the events started flowing, I had no idea that events were even a thing. Like when I started, like who knew?
I mean, were they though? Like, is the thing. Like, I don't even like remember influencer events being a thing, and then they came back or started with such a bang, and they were everywhere. I feel like last summer especially.
Oh my gosh.
But sure. I'm sure that was so weird, like coming out of COVID with like being like, oh my God, this is more of an industry than anyone had thought.
Right.
Because everyone had been on their phones during the pandemic. So that part seems enjoyable, right?
Yes.
And so you were enjoying that, and you started though getting into more of the nitty gritty of like trying to make a career out of it.
Right.
So what did you learn? What are 3 words actually? Let's say, what are 3 words that you would describe what you learned through influencing?
Oh God. Exhausting would definitely be one of them. Dare I say superficial as another. I don't want to like seem like I'm hating on influencing. I loved being an influencer. I love my influencer friends, but for me, my personal experience was it was very exhausting, very superficial, and exciting. I would say exciting's in there.
So some positive.
Yeah.
Well, I think that something that like we've talked about on our like Under the Influence team is how influencing's an amazing thing, and we've set out to sort of show how much of a grind it is. So with things being a grind, and no matter how much you love something, it's still a job, and you can still burn out, and you can still get exhausted. So, you know, being blunt about the realities of it isn't necessarily bashing it. It's the same way like actors, I feel like, might have a negative experience in the industry, but it doesn't mean that it's like overall was a bad experience.
Yeah. So overall, I would say it was a very positive, like awesome experience. I think just towards the end of being involved in it is when I started to just like totally spin out and burn out and just get so lost in the sauce.
Lost in the sauce, literally. So you did an awesome series on your TikTok talking about this. And one of the first things that stuck out to me was the fact that you're a freelance worker when you're an influencer, and people are not good about paying like on time, promptly. And when you're doing this for a living and you have to pay the rent, that's problematic. So can you talk a little bit about that experience?
Yeah, of course. It's honestly crazy and like impossible, and something I kind of had to come to realize is that a lot of these TikTokers that are so popular and popping off right now, oh my gosh, is that they're like 19, 20, 21. They're still on their family's insurance, family's phone plan, like Wi-Fi, everything. Like there's a lot of things that you don't think about. So when I fully became freelance, like influencing full time, I mean, the biggest shock was like losing health insurance. Like then you have to go out. I mean, I'm 27, like I'm way, I feel on the older side of like the influencer world. And so, and my parents are a little bit older than my friends' parents, so they were on like retirement insurance and all that stuff. Like they weren't throwing me on that or whatever. So I had to go seek that out, figure out how to do that. It's just been, it's so much paperwork and like little things that add up that you don't realize are gonna be so, it sounds great, like just posting on Instagram for a living, whatever, but there's so many little things that go into it that are just so stressful. And I don't know, I think a big part of the payment thing is that so much of influencing is unpaid work, because it's the time that you take to answer your emails or make, which it all sounds so silly for someone who's not in the industry. I mean, you guys talk to influencers all the time, so you know what's up, but like selecting outfits, sometimes people send you a 19-page thing and you take the time to look through and choose your sizes and choose this, and then they're like, oh, that doesn't have size. So that takes time. Then responding to emails, responding to event invites, negotiations, all of that is like unpaid work. You're not getting paid for that time.
And I think something that a lot of people don't realize when it comes to creating an ad for a brand is that, and you also talk about this, like lack of creative freedom. And a lot of the times a concept will be submitted and it won't be accepted. And then, you know, you'll submit a new concept and then that one's accepted, but then you make the video and they have edits and you have to refilm. And, you know, the amount of time that ends up being spent on an ad that's getting paid X amount, it's not even worth that X amount. It's crazy. Like, you're so underpaid for the work that actually goes into, yes, it comes out to 15 seconds of content, but the work that goes into it is beyond that.
Yeah.
So would you say you've had specific brands, and you don't have to call them out by name, but like, what has been one of the worst experiences that you've had with a brand where they've been completely inconsiderate of the fact that you are a working individual trying to pay the rent?
Yeah, I think, I mean, as a general, no hate to any brands, but just like as a general consensus, it's a lot of breathing down your neck, and like it's almost like having a micromanager from 10 different companies, just being like, when are you going to be done? When is the content? When is this? And there's a particular women's clothing brand that a lot of influencers work for, and it's like one of the big first things is getting a code with them. Like that's like one of the standing points. There's
like prongs on the ladder.
Yeah, and that's like a big moment. You tell everyone like, oh, I got a code, like use it. And they literally ask you for so much content and never ever offer to pay. Like even if you ask, it's a hell no, basically. And this brand is extremely picky about, like, they plan your caption for you. They
interesting.
Like put out a 10-page list of rules in like red ink and bold, and it's just like, oh my god, it's not that deep. Like we're just trying on cute clothes. It doesn't need to be this much. So I think things like that, like I had been so obsessed with this brand for years, and seeing everyone else work with them, I was like, this is so cool. And then when I got in, like every time they emailed me for a new month, I was like, oh, do I really want to do this again?
Right,
but like
right.
for the clothes, sure, but it would be like, we need a 30-second TikTok with all of this different copy on it, on this different page and this and that. Then we need a carousel with at least 3 full body outfit pictures, and then we want like a 20 like frame story of you trying everything on. And I was like, who has the time
That's
in
so
a
much.
day? Like,
yeah.
that is so specific, I feel, to girls who do it full time, which is fine, but also you're just still not getting paid for
If
that
you're not
time.
paying them, but you're expecting the work out of someone who's doing it full time, you should be paying
Right.
people for their labor that goes into it.
Exactly.
That's wild. And another thing that goes back to is the lack of creative freedom. And I think something that brands are really struggling to get their head around is the fact that the less creative freedom you give a creator in making the ad, the worse their ad is going to perform.
Yeah.
So they're hurting their own, marketing strategy by not utilizing the creativity that comes out of the person they're hiring.
Exactly. I think there's definitely a disconnect between, I think these brands are so new to hire these marketing specialists to work with influencers, they don't realize that there should be specific ad content that you ask to be made for your brand,
Yes.
and then the way that it can be marketed for that specific influencer.
And their audience.
Yeah, because a lot of these brands just want their ad that they would run, which is so e-commerce focused and like very stiff and scripted, rather than being able to seamlessly integrate it into your everyday routine, which
Right.
makes it so much more authentic. Like, it's
And
just maddening.
You know what's interesting too is I feel like the music industry, when like Halsey kind of came out against this, like they had a lot of like negative backlash around their strategies in like marketing on social media. But I feel like the music industry has done the best job of doing it in a very organic way, where it just kind of like fits in seamlessly to people's content.
Right.
Whereas like the fashion industry are a little more like rigid in what they want.
Right, which just takes all the fun out of it.
Exactly.
My big thing that I was talking about in my TikTok series too is like, if you just want an ad, hire a marketing team.
Yes,
Like,
exactly.
Hire a model to pose and
Yeah.
do your boring ad that you want to
Yes.
do, rather than why waste the time seeking out this person to then waste their time making content that they don't even like.
Right. Or like hire them to go and do the content on their page, because then at least it's like,
Right.
okay, if you think this is your audience and it's going to work for your audience, market it to that audience, not to this creator specific audience.
Right.
And mess with their success.
Exactly.
As a creator. So you then went into, on this TikTok series, just the general mental health impact that this job had on you.
Yes.
And I think the first obvious thing is comparison and sort of the like, my brain just went to the highs and lows of college football from Riverdale. Do you know that clip?
Yeah.
The highs and lows of social media, but like truly like the adrenaline you get when a video is popping off versus like the low of being like, what the fuck? Why is no one watching this and no one's liking it and engaging?
Yeah.
And like it's always the videos that you want to do the best that never do.
Oh my God, through and through. It's actually ridiculous. Like, you could put all the time in the world into a video and it's gonna flop, and then scrap something together in 2 seconds and it pops off. It's crazy, and it has to be assumed at this point. Like, I just
Right.
knew if I was gonna spend a lot of time on something, it wasn't going
You're
anywhere.
like, this is shit.
Yeah. Sorry, what was the question?
I don't even
so
know.
sidetracked.
Dealing with the highs and lows.
Oh, okay,
of
yes.
it. And like, I guess kind of also, like, how did you then approach that going into content? Because I think going viral can happen on purpose, but it is hard to, like, it's still not easy to do it consistently, I guess is the best way of putting it. So how would you approach that? And, how do you stay consistent enough to pay the bills, I guess? Like, it's like,
Yeah.
and I guess also, there's so many thoughts on this, but like, it kind of all goes back to the idea that people always say that, a lot of influencers start with privilege and they have, you know, a safety net to kind of fall back on, and it's what you were saying with like younger influencers too, because they're still on their parents' payroll,
Right.
and influencing wasn't as accessible, I feel like, when we were that age. You know, and we're only like 3-4 years older than these kids, but
Right.
it's just like the way the industry has developed in the last 2 years, I'd say.
Yeah.
So I don't really even know what the question is, but just
I'll roll
the
it.
general topic
Yes.
of that.
So I'll start with like the highs and lows.
Right.
That was really, really hard just to deal with. I mean, and everyone deals with it. So like, I don't want to be like, boo-hoo, my videos didn't pop off. But when you really, truly like have dealt with clinical depression for so long, like those little hits of endorphins and then the drops are just so dramatic, and it was just so difficult for me. And I remember one of my first, not first, but one of the couple handful very exciting things to happen to me was Urban Outfitters reached out of the, like, pretty much out of the blue and said, we love the TikTok you made in our jeans, like, can we pay you $1,000 for it? And I was like, yes, let's do it. It was so cool. They posted on their page, it got 5 million views, like, so exciting. But then when I went to see why it got 5 million views, people were literally ripping me to shreds. Like, those ugly dad sneakers, like, why is she, I like turned to show my back and people were like, why is this idiot like standing facing her wall? Like, literally, I like changed in my doorway because I live with all girls, like, whatever.
Right.
And they were like, ew, like this slut is like changing in front of her door. Like, literally anything you could think of, like the way I looked at the camera, the way I smiled. They said I was creepy. They said I looked like a bully. They said I was too skinny. Like, every mean comment you could think of. And like, now I'm so like, okay, you have no life. But at the time, I was like a baby getting into it, and I was just like laying in bed all day, just like refreshing, waiting for more hate to come through.
It's hard the first time, I feel like it happens too, to not feel like it's super personal. And then you realize, I think, over time that it's not, and people, you know, they can say what they want on the internet, but it's like they're hiding behind a screen.
Right.
Well, that's such an interesting point, because we do talk about like haters and trolls, but the idea that like a video was successful and had really high engagement, and that's the other thing that I think we've all changed our mindset on. It's like, you know what, haters are engagement and comments are currency, so thank you. But they're still being mean, and like the idea that like a video is going viral, but because people are like saying negative things, is another whole aspect that it's like, okay, would you rather a video not perform, or have it perform because people are trolling you?
Exactly.
So
and
that's hard.
It's like this weird kind of in between where you don't, it's like exciting that it popped off, and I was so thrilled. I mean, Urban like owns Free People, so that was like a full circle moment for me, because I was like, oh my
Very
god,
full circle.
the brand I started with like now wants me, and then I just got absolutely shit on, and I was like, why me? Yeah. So that was rough, and just like generally, I kind of just lost. I mean, I think there came a point where it was so much at once, where I like fully was on this upswing, and there was just emails flooding in all day, every day, and I was accepting like everything because I was just so excited. And then all of a sudden I had like more skincare than I ever knew what to do with, like all this jewelry. I had no idea whose was whose, and I felt like my head was spinning. I was going to Goodwill like 6 times a week to get rid of clothes because I just like couldn't keep it all in my house, and I just felt, I don't know, I started to feel like so wasteful and all that stuff, and then I couldn't remember what I was supposed to post for which person. So creating a spreadsheet was really helpful for me, just like what I need to do, what's complete, what's in progress, that kind of thing, was how I stayed organized. But it was just, it's such a gamble posting every day. I feel like I'm talking all over the place. And I don't know, it's just like you put it out there, and I kind of, you know, at some point you like know if it's gonna hit or not. Within an hour or two of posting, it's like, another one bites the dust. So it's like that 2-hour period where I spoke with a like social media coach, and she was like, when you post, just put it away, don't look at it. And it's so hard to stick with that.
It's so hard. And one thing that I think maybe was a myth that was created to help people with this is like the idea that like if you close TikTok right after posting and then you come back, it goes viral,
Yeah.
Like, I think that is a good mindset to have, just in the sense that, like, close it, put it away, don't look. Because at the end of the day, there's nothing you can really do to change the outcome of how something performs.
Yeah.
And then I guess on the same mental health topic, you said you noticed a performance based on your weight.
Yes.
And that was, like, staggering to me that you said that ones where you said you looked like skeletal skinny were the ones that, like, were performing better.
Oh my God, by a landslide. Like, last summer, I was like, I'm 5'5" and I was like 102 pounds. Like, I was literally a walking skeleton, and my videos every single day, anything I posted, easy 100,000 views. Like, no questions asked. And that just kind of like made me think like, oh, it's got to stay this skinny and like things will do well. And it's so true. Like, even now, I mean, I like don't consider myself like fat or anything, but I gained like 15, 20 pounds over the winter, and I'll still go back and post drafts from like that time, pop off immediately. So it's like, that's there's wild. Such a clear difference in, like, I would say my TikToks, unless they really hit something, average like 2,500 views, it's definitely at least 5,000, like if I'm posting from back when I was like so skinny. And it's just like hard seeing, I mean, a lot of like the NYC girls are so skinny, and like some of that's genetic, of course, and like no judgment, literally, like all bodies are beautiful. Some people are just built that way, but it is like that funny trend of like, is it fashion or is it skinny?
Yeah,
you know?
no, literally.
Like,
yeah.
I don't even know if my outfits were like that good at the time, but I was like so skinny that it just worked. So that kind of just like messed me up. And over the winter, I mean, seasonal depression like sucks, so I feel like I'm less inclined to post during the winter anyway. But then coming back from like putting on a little bit more weight than I had last summer when I was so stupid skinny, and my videos were like flopping constantly, and I was like, oh, like everyone hates me because I'm fat now. Like that was like,
it's like, how do you not spiral? Like, the general idea that you need to look a certain way and compare yourself to people on a screen, but then to be the person putting themselves out there and see the direct correlation must be just like so hard to stay grounded and like remind yourself that that isn't the way that you need to be getting approval.
Yeah.
I
don't know, it was so frustrating to me, like the Kardashians, when they first, or the past couple of years that they've become like the royal family in the United States, like they were a little bit bigger a couple of years ago, and like that was when finally like I feel body positivity had like such a breakthrough, and everyone was like, all body types are beautiful, whatever. And I've seen tremendous growth in friends who do like size 6 fashion or like size 8 fashion, because it's an underappreciated niche on social media. But it's like somewhere in between, like the normal body type just gets slept on, because it's like, you're not interesting, like you're not big, you're not tiny, like you're boring.
You're boring, and it's so true. I feel like when we were in high school, something that was like so trendy was like the skinny Tumblr girl, and like I feel like that for us was like our toxic version of what maybe like some of the really skinny influencer girls are today.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up on Tumblr. That was like my thing, and I mean, that probably didn't help me with my eating in high school.
Right.
And I like really had grown out of, dealt with my issues and everything, and I didn't really feel like they were like silently lurking until all of a sudden I was like really skinny, and it wasn't even like I was intending to at the time, but then once I reached that point, then I got into
and
this,
then
like,
you were like aware,
and then
of
I was
it.
like, oh, I need to stay at this point, because like it's making me pop off. And then I was like, what for what?
Yeah, like for whose like what affirmation are you looking for from like strangers, if that's you know what you're looking for?
And then I kind of started to have this like downfall of like I wasn't eating as much, so then I didn't have as much energy, and then I just wanted to sleep all day, and I didn't want to make content, and it just like was this snowball effect that just got worse and worse, and then it all was like and I just basically stopped replying to emails for a couple months, and I was just like, I'm a ghost, I don't want to talk to anyone, sorry.
Right. And then it kind of, this all goes back to also what you were saying. In normal jobs, no one else is around for your performance review.
Right.
But in this industry, everyone can look every single day to see how you're doing.
Sure.
Someone can have, 12K followers, but have a way more engaged following than someone with 200K.
Right.
So that's something that I think a lot of people don't realize, but other people get very bogged down by the numbers.
Right, because I feel like it's the first thing that catches someone's eye when they view someone's page. It's like, oh, 300,000 people are interested in this person. There should be a reason that I should be interested in them. And that is like what hooks someone. But then for a brand, it's more of a standpoint of like, okay, they may have that many followers, but who's really has a community who's gonna like follow them and actually like buy the product.
And at least brands get that, right? Like they understand the power behind community, which makes it easier, I think, for people with smaller followings that are like, you know what, I still can sell the hell out of this product.
Right.
But it's still hard to like look at probably what other people are doing, and you're seeing what other people are doing.
Right. So you're watching other people, and not that followers are like the end all be all of success, but it's definitely, it's weird. Some girl messaged me and was like, your peers become your competitors. And I was like, that's a really interesting
Because they're your colleagues, right? Like your influencer friends are the people you're going to events with.
Right.
But then they're your work friends, and they're your friends. But they're also your biggest competition in a lot of ways.
Right.
Like you noted wanting to like show your life on social media and not like curating it too much, because like that's what keeps things authentic.
Right. And
so
I actually wanted to touch on that because after I posted my TikTok series, one of my old sorority sisters from High Point reached out, and she used to work from a brand standpoint, and she's like, I commend you for everything you said. Like, I'm not disagreeing with you at all, but here is where a brand comes at it. And she explained, she was like, you post so authentically to your life and like so true, and that's like not what sells. Like people want to get into this fantasy world.
They want it to be aspirational.
Right.
Yeah.
And like, I guess smoking weed on my roof every night with my roommates like isn't the life that's...
It's not as brand friendly.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, that's a fun lifestyle, but they want almost an unattainable lifestyle to look at, to like imagine and put themselves into, rather than what's so fun for me is capturing my like true moments that I have in my life. And it's been really hard to kind of come to terms with like, I just have to do it for myself.
Yeah.
And not for wanting to gain followers or like get brand deals or anything, because that wasn't bringing me fulfillment at the time anyway. So I kind of just had to have this like mental shift to understand that it wasn't me and my life that was uninteresting to people. It was too genuine, I think.
Right.
I needed to be creating this like fairy tale life that I wasn't. So
well, it's important that you feel fulfilled by it, because then it's like not worth it at all.
Right.
Especially because of the work that goes into it.
It's been a godsend switching into this. Like, I love content creation and it's so fun, and the events, I'm like, still want to go to the events.
Yes.
It's definitely just a lot more like taking the time for myself and kind of like recreating my day-to-day routine, what I like and like what actually fuels me. And I'm like so excited to go into work every day. So that's a really good feeling.
That's an amazing feeling.
Yeah.
And like reclaiming your love for what kind of brought you here is also really important.
Yeah, it was crazy how freeing, like after I did that whole influencing series, it was so funny because I like had talked about how I wanted to take a step back, and then all of a sudden I was like, wait, now that it's off my chest, like I kind of want to keep going.
Right. You're like, now like I can do it at like my own will versus I feel like you need to keep something up.
Right. I think it's a lot to do with when someone tells you to do something, you don't want to do it, and now that no one's telling you to do it, I just want to grind out on my own and just have fun with it.
Just have fun with it, exactly. Well, I can't wait to see what you do next. Thanks so much.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned.